County, Florida, joining us now from the Tampa area. It's great to have you back with us here, Lee. Give us a sense of what Tampa experienced and how concerned you might be for states north.
Sure, great question. I think the Tampa Bay area didn't receive the most catastrophic impacts as compared to our neighbors and counties in the Big Bend area, but significant nonetheless. Pinellas County, Hillsborough County, still experiencing flooding along the coastal areas, bridges with water in those coastal areas on our barrier islands in the Tampa Bay area. So again, looking at the images here on the screen, this is something fairly significant for the Tampa Bay area.
Well, we knew that it was going to be a big issue for Florida, but what about South Carolina? Are these other states that weren't bracing for the eye of the storm, are they potentially ready?
Sure. I think they are. This is something that happens often as these storms cross through the Gulf of Mexico. But yeah, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, those folks and the emergency managers in those communities have been keeping a careful eye on Idalia over the last couple days. And I think they'll be ready. They plan and prepare for this year round. So they're actively watching what these impacts are going to be in their communities once all the attention kind of goes towards them and away from Florida to an extent.
Brian Sullivan just told us he's always concerned about what happens the next day when the sun comes up, Lee Mayfield. What will Floridians see when the sun rises tomorrow?
Sure. And again, I think it's a little too early to say, we're going to be okay here. This was an incredibly significant storm, Category 3, almost Category 4 at landfall, significant surge, the most significant surge. Some of these counties in the Big Bend, Citrus County, Levy County, Taylor County. This is an incredible event for them. And, they may not have the population centers that the Tampa Bay area has, but if that's your community, if that's where you live, then definitely a bad day in that area of Florida.
Well, I was reading that it's the biggest since a storm of identical strength hit in 1896. So what kind of cleanup are we talking about?
Debris operations will commence immediately. Once those winds die down and it's safe for responders to get on the roads, they'll do their first push of debris to clear that debris from the roads to get emergency responders in. And then as we get going, there'll be a long, complex debris operation in those communities. So the storm surge, 10 to 15 feet of storm surge in some areas really brings a ton of debris with it, both vegetative debris and construction debris from those homes. So I think the public will have to be patient. We're not even there yet. We're still looking at life safety, search and rescue, damage assessment, and then we'll get into a complex debris operation in those counties in the Big Bend of Florida.
Lee, we understand part of the strength of this storm was generated from the high water temperature in the Gulf, in the ocean. And I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about the impact, at least in your opinion, of climate change here. We're juggling natural disasters on both sides of the country and in areas that aren't always used to them. How do you see it?
Yeah, this is the world we live in. We're coming up on the 1-year anniversary of Hurricane Ian last year in Southwest Florida. And here we are again, not even at the actual peak of hurricane season yet. So we have, a number of months to go. And it's been a busy 5 years. I remember going back to Hurricane Irma when I was in Lee County. And it seems like every year we've had significant storms, significant events, and these storms that can rapidly intensify, which is the fear of, I know, meteorologists and emergency managers throughout the state of Florida and elsewhere, as we see these storms rapidly grow from a tropical storm to a Cat 4, Cat 5 in a matter of days, which limits time, limits decision making. And I think that's something we have to be ready for as we get into future hurricane seasons.
Lee, it is August 30th. Tropical storms, hurricane season in the Atlantic Basin run from mid-August until late October, maybe November. What is left in store?
Sure. I think, we still have a ways to go. If you look at the seasonal models from the National Hurricane Center, from Colorado State University, we should absolutely expect more storms, both in the Atlantic and the Gulf of Mexico. So that's anticipated. I think our responders and our public safety professionals, our elected officials at the local, state, federal level understand that, and they're just going to have to be ready. Florida, as an example, in 2004 and 2005 dealt with with a number of storms back to back. And while that was very tiresome and difficult, some of the best emergency managers and public safety folks in the country live in Florida, in my opinion. So I think they'll be ready for it. So it may be a long couple months if those forecasts hold.
Getting back to the matter at hand, Lee, there are buildings in Georgia and the Carolinas where this storm has been and is heading that are not built to the same code in Florida. You've got people living there who did not receive the warnings likely that Floridians did. How does that come together in the next 24 to 48 hours?
Sure. Sometimes the attention on these things are when they're in the Gulf of Mexico at that Cat 3, Cat 4, Cat 5 strength. And maybe the focus isn't there when we just hear about rainfall. I mean, I think that's something that the public's really going to have to get used to, is that rainfall can be devastating. We know storm surge and rainfall are significant drivers of injuries and loss of life in these types of events. So I know the folks in those states and in those emergency operations centers are doing everything they can to look at the forecast and then make those decisions and notify the public just as quickly as they can. So this is a faster moving storm than storms we've seen before. So I think that also, to your point, limits the amount of time we have in our business to communicate with the public.
Just months before this hurricane, Governor DeSantis rejected $350 million in federal funds that were meant to help tackle in terms of climate change, retrofitting homes. Was that a mistake?
Yeah, you know, I think the focus right now for elected officials, no matter what side of the aisle you sit on, is on the life safety efforts. I think, you know, between FEMA, the state, local agencies, and all these other organizations who are involved here, they're going to do what they have to do with the resources available right now. And I think we have some work to do to look towards the future on how we fund things like resiliency mitigation. But these storms, they cross boundaries, whether that's jurisdictional boundaries, political boundaries, and, you know, these hurricanes don't know any better. So I think that's where the priority is going to be right now. And I trust everyone's going to work together to provide for the citizens of the state of Florida and the rest of the states that are impacted by Idalia.
Lee, very diplomatic. Thank you so much for joining us. Lee Mayfield joining us from Tampa. He's really tracking this storm. Coming up, Mitch McConnell.